I really, really, really hope you didn't just show up here without doing the homework. But if you did, whatever, that's on you. That ain't on me. You're going to miss part of the point here if you're just trying to show up and like half-ass it and act like you did the work like the rest of us. But the homework for last week was the documentary The Corporation. You can find it on YouTube. If you haven't watched it and you want to watch it before you listen to this episode, this is your opportunity to pause now, go watch the documentary, and then come back and listen to the episode. It'll make a lot more sense. If not, that's fine. No worries. Let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and give you your homework for next week's episode at the end of this one. So make sure you stick it out until the end. Thanks for being here. Peace. Something I wanted to unpack about the process of what the corporation is representing in our society is the first side of it being that it's a paradox. It produces great wealth in any position that it goes into. And the counter side of the paradox being that it also causes tremendous havoc on literally everything, all parts of the ecosystem. A corporation has to exist in a society, especially a society like ours. They didn't exist in the way that they exist now, which is something that the documentary unpacked a little bit. The 14th Amendment handed opportunities for corporate lawyers like all sorts of directions. So what a corporation was initially founded for and what it initially did in terms of big projects, bridges, railroads, highways, that kind of thing, it now does a lot more. And when you unpack this documentary, you realize how sinister that can get and where that goes. So I wanted to bring that up, the necessity of it in its form, the fact that it's a paradox as it is. So not only is it needed and kind of required in the big society, it's also paradoxical. So there's no build off. It's fucking constantly canceling itself out, basically. When you bring it into a society, into the fold as a legal person, and then you bring it into society as a requirement because of these types of big projects that have to take place, you can see why then it's easy to correlate the similarities between corporate world, business world, going to work every day, and familyhood, having a group of people that you consider close and similar to you and whatever. Not everybody feels that way about their coworkers, but I think most people who have stuck with the job long enough or been in the workforce long enough have met coworkers that they surprisingly clicked with and found vibes with. That is not uncommon. The opportunity to have a familial connection through a corporate connection lends to the idea of how the energy works at the core of it. So for me, part of it is that we're looking at the psychology of the situation. Part of it is that we're looking at the energetic kind of components, the base of chemistry. That's how I'm looking at that. When it operates itself as a legal person under law, corporation is actually a different type of person than you or I in terms of what its actual obligations are. As an individual, your responsibility as a person is very different versus what a legal person as a corporation is doing and what their responsibilities are. The documentary outlined this a lot more, but the idea of a legal person and a corporation being that is their bottom line is the profit, and they're required by law to attain profits year over year with growth in order to be considered a sustainable corporation. That's what they're required to do. They have to show an economic foundation. So every corporation, obviously, because it is what it is going to have profit motivation. It's a corporation. It needs money to thrive. With people, you can throw them into the same context. People need the same type of energy flow to continue thriving. There's an overlay of trying to put the corporation as close to what the necessities of a person are doing, but the possibilities for danger, damage, hazard to the environment are way higher, as you can tell. So the level at which we see exploitation happen, the level at which we see just mismanagement of funds, time, resources on purpose. Like, it's right now we live in this like flagrant world full of negligence. And even in the corporate frame, there just isn't any fucking room for that. So I have hypotheses on where I think the world's going from here, but I think it's really important, and that's why I chose this, was to outline some key factors of how a corporation has injected itself into our sphere as this one thing, but it's operating as this completely different thing, and none of us get to really even put those two things together until we get old enough to put those two things together. So that's what the fuck we're doing here. Okay, so you saw how in the documentary they went over the checklist of if a corporation was getting a mental evaluation, here are all the things that it checks off. And at the bottom of it, the diagnosis is corporation would be considered a psychopath. Okay, nutshell. That's what the overall documentary is pointing out. Is that if we go through, here's all the ways we can show that the corporation meets this fucking checklist by the actual actions that take place at the hands of what this person would be like if they had a living form. Now, backing up just a bit, there's a couple of big takeaways from how this process has continued to be possible. One of those ways is through exploitation. Continuing to be able to exploit the world resources in different economies of the world has allowed this to perpetuate. So here we are. The only way to stop exploitation would be to stop spending money, and literally no one's going to do that. Like, that's insane. People are just not going to do it. They don't know how, because it's an addiction. At this point, we're actually in a cycle of addiction overall. So you're not going to be able to tell people, stop buying, and that will solve the problem. It probably very well would. If people didn't spend money in a large capacity for even a couple of days, it would change the game in a large way, because people would realize how much buying power they actually have. But no one can actually do that, because even if you said, you're not going to spend money for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, people would go spend money for weeks before to prepare for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it wouldn't even out. The only way to do it would be to not forewarn anybody. They just have to do it on the drop of a dime. Like, oh, could I survive for 3 days? Sure. But if everyone is going to try and get on board with it, it would make up for itself in the time before. Does that make sense? So you're not going to get people on that kind of a train. I don't think that's a solve. I think it's important to get people to pay attention to what the whole system looks like, so they really can exit with their own thinking patterns. They really can be evolved in the way that they're dealing with the situation as it's presented in front of them. That is key, okay? So that's where I want to just drop this one right here, is that's the overall key here, is to be able to take what was said in this and apply it to an overall knowledge of the system that you're currently in, and just leave it there. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to go out and try to change the world. Just leave it right there. That's it. All right, just as a quick side note, because I'm just going to drop this little gem in here just to see if you can pick up what I'm putting down. You know what I'm saying? When we figured out that you could use oil, petroleum, to create all kinds of different products, when we figured out you could literally make pretty much anything out of oil, which is what we call petroleum-based products. It's like a whole large percentage of the market right now. And it's ruined the planet pretty much as far as like production goes. This is not good for the planet that we do this. Now, when we figured out that we could create petroleum-based products, the initial data that came out saying, hey, using petroleum-based stuff in certain things is actually dangerous to health, like consumption. So certain things they were spraying on people, just not even thinking about it. When that initial data came out, it was considered trivial. It was considered unnecessary. because it was like so small. It was just like small data. It wasn't until a whole bunch of terrible things had to keep happening that a large body of data unfolded, that then all of a sudden we had to start taking action and paying attention to this. So I'm just going to leave that right there. Like when we first figured out a certain new way of doing things was dangerous and it was showing signs of needing to be reeled in or rethought, the idea of a corporation being able to make money off of its petroleum-based products was more important than the body of data at the time because it was so small and so trivial. Hardly anyone was getting hurt. So in the context of the corporation, you can see how that lends terribly to this particular scenario with petroleum-based products. In a larger scenario of all types of markets and industries, you can see how small little bits of data saying, hey, this should be reeled in or rethought or recalibrated or just not highly promoted as 100% effective if there are still dangers. Maybe we should take a look at that in categories like this, where it's big business. It seems awfully protocol to have those initial stages of warning data considered to be trivial, considered to be useless. Seems awfully protocol that that's how this goes. So I'm just going to leave that little nutshell right there because as it pertains to large corporations, we're playing a game of connect the dots, read between the lines, chutes and ladders. Stick with me. Definitely by far the biggest takeaway from this documentary that pertains to now, if we're going to go from an angle of like, how does this data pertain to information that's happening now? First and foremost is that the entire grid of what we consider to be the plane of existence that we're on called Earth has been dissected into a matrix for real estate. This started with land, it moved into a format of water, and now there's ways that we can see how air has been dissected for flight paths and like real estate when it comes to who's allowed to actually send things up in the sky. Now that we've gotten that far into dissecting, owning, categorizing, turning everything into real estate, first take a step back to realize that if no one agreed that this was okay or this was actually how the laws of nature work, because we know that this isn't how the laws of nature work. We know that if no one comes along and like imposes ideas onto the earth or the water or the air, it will just continue to be as is. Therefore, anything we do is considered to some degree or another should be considered anthropomorphic. Like we're putting our own things onto the things, and it's making things more complicated. So first and foremost, own that, recognize that you've got to become aware that if everyone agreed that this was dumb and we can't actually do this because this isn't actually natural to natural law, like really you're just operating the space you're operating in. That's the most basic format of natural law, is that each individual is operating the space that they're operating in, and that is their nation. That is their space. We're going to get a little bit deeper into that in the next episode, but like at the core of it, it's important to recognize that this entire thing cannot be divided. It's all one thing. It's all interconnected. Literally, it's only divided because we agree that it's divided. Okay. Next, I don't know if you were paying attention in that documentary when they got deep into what is happening with the data engineering patent game. Were you paying attention when they were explaining that certain genes, once figured out and air quotes discovered in the genome of not only humans but all species, are currently being patented by none other than corporations because they can own patents? They're considered a person, a living person, and therefore, when you get really down into that, we are actually speaking on levels. It's actually backwards. This is the trickiest part about it, is it's actually backwards because we just said, you can't do this. You can't actually do this. The only reason it's happening is because people agree to it. That's it. If you don't tell people they have a choice to not agree, and they can peacefully not agree, they really can. And they can genuinely do it with their heart. And they'll be supported by the universe to do so, as long as they truly believe that they're supported by the universe to do so. There will be divine intervention on their behalf at all times. It's an unwavering faith. That's what it is. It is an unwavering faith, for real, that will get you there. It's crazy, and it's hard to explain because you can't. I call it the knowing, because there's a certain element of you when you really, really, truly just know something. And take that for anytime this has ever happened in your life where you just know a thing is going to happen, and it does. That drive, that knowing. And sometimes I think we get into those situations where we feel like we have that and we don't, it doesn't work. That's not the situations I'm talking about. I'm talking about the situations where that knowing comes through and you heard the call and you're like, I knew I was right, listening to myself. That right there is actually what agreed upon unwavering faith in the divine process is all about. Now, we've marched ourselves into quite an interesting pickle at this position. So there isn't anything I feel like I have to say or contribute about how we're supposed to go about it next. I encourage you to listen to yourself because it's an agreed upon reality. I seek a peaceful outcome in all endeavors of my experience. I seek a peaceful outcome in all endeavors of my experience. I seek a peaceful outcome in all endeavors of my experience. I seek a peaceful outcome in all endeavors of my experience. There is nothing more important to me than maintaining peace and knowing that I'm going to carry my son through this life by being a peaceful person. And getting angry when I need to. And holding accountability when I need to. And being firm when I need to. Well-rounded. I want to be peaceful and well-rounded because peaceful is right in the middle of that duality. It's not on the happy-go-lucky love side of the duality, and it's not on the depression side of duality. It's on the neutral. It's in the middle of the duality. It's the thing that encompasses and holds that duality in place so that you can see that there's one and two sides. The ability to observe, that has the most value to me. So I wanted the takeaway from this to be think about the fact that things are out from underneath you just being agreed upon. And that you must become aware in order to recognize what you don't have to agree to. You have to become more aware of what the whole thing is. Not because you have to go to war with it, but because you need to become aware for yourself so you can unlock more intuition within. Your ability to stay more aware and more open gives your intuition the ability to tap more information to help you move proper. This entire collective experience is in your favor always, but it favors your ability to stand firm. It favors your ability to be bold. It favors your ability to be courageous. I mean that. Your homework for the next week is a documentary that you can find on YouTube called Kymatica. That is spelled Kymatica. 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 That's your homework for the next week. I'm not even going to dig too deep into it. The only thing I'm going to tell you right now is that it's a super kind of tree rattling documentary. If you're hyper religious, don't watch this documentary. If you're extremely serious about your religion, don't watch this documentary. I don't advise it. It tends to shake people's trees more than other documentaries, so be prepared for that. I would encourage getting a pen and a piece of paper because there's lots of information that you might want to take notes on so that you can think to research things that you learn about as you watch it. And other than that, I will see you next week. Thanks for listening.